What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Tony, and today we are reviewing, I know I'm late to the party, but we're reviewing the new zombie flick in the 28 franchise, 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Again, I'm sorry I'm late, folks. I chose not to see this in theaters. This is the fourth entry thus far in the franchise, and it's the second entry of a planned trilogy. First things first, though, if you haven't seen the first three films, you should probably turn this off. At least turn this review off because there is going to be some areas where I do spoil a couple of things for this film. In order to, discuss it truthfully, I kind of have to. However, please keep in mind, people, that these spoilers, they won't ruin the film for you necessarily. I won't be spoiling anything major that will prevent you from seeing it. There we go. But just keep in mind, minor details that are impossible to gloss over, dude. But before I jump into this madness, let's do a quick rundown. There's, probably some people that need the history of these films. So to properly educate those unaware of how we got here, let's start from the beginning. So if you were, 10 like me, 10 years old back in 2002, then you probably had your hands on a DVD copy of 28 Days Later. And God help you if you fucking didn't, dude. I watched it, man. It horrified me, and I fell in love with it. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. I mean, even then, all the pompous, assholes will have you scolded for calling this movie what it is, which is the ultimate zombie flick, right? Then 2007, we saw the sequel 28 weeks later. Oh my God. I made sure to download a copy of this bad boy off the internet as soon as Pirate Bay had it. All my life, dude, I have championed that Weeks is one of the greatest zombie movies ever fucking made, if not the best to this day. And I know I am not alone on this island, dude. I have no problem professing my love, right, for the original. It's a good film. And I'm not one to shy away from 28 Days Later at all. I think that it's amazing, dude. I do respect its legacy. But man, I just love Weeks more. I think it is way better, dude. It has the better story. I know it's the Americanized version. But at the end of the day, I respect and understand why Days is held in such high regard. Even now, dude, it's still considered one of the best. But then came, 28 years later, right? Which was last year. This long-awaited sequel was announced, and I still did not believe it was going to happen. Then I saw the trailer, and dude, I was in. Normally, I'd see a film like this in theaters, but I was broke as shit, dude. And at the time, I just decided I'll wait for its digital release. That's what I had been doing. That's what we're all doing, I think. And, I'm glad I did. I was highly disappointed with 28 years later. I walked out scratching my head thinking, okay, that was not what I wanted, but it was interesting. What was with that fucking ending? What the fuck was that? It had many problems, dude. It was very frustrating. Upon first reaction, I was frustrated. But after watching it a few more times, it grew on me, and I found more things about it that I enjoyed. To put it lightly, I guess, I walked away from 28 years later bummed out, and I decided I was not going to see the follow-up, the next one, in theaters. I just, dude, no. But it's still an okay movie. I definitely wasn't happy about the fact that I left, the first two films were still better in my mind, dude. But maybe this one will prove me wrong, right? So if I'm late to the party on this one, that is why. I just chose to not do the theater thing. But here we are, 28 years later, The Bone Temple. It hits theaters on January 16th, a couple months right after. Written again by Alex Garland, who also wrote the OG 28 Days Later and the last 28 years later. This one's directed by Nia DaCosta. Hope I'm saying the name right. Not sure who Nia is, sue me, but I would argue that she should be trusted over Danny Boyle. This is just based on the fact that the last one was not it. However, this one isn't much either. This film starts out with Spike, our lead character from the last film, where he is rescued by the Fingers. That's the name of the cult. They're a cult-like gang who don the Jimmy Savile outfits. Dude, just go look this man up, and it's weird. The imagery is weird. But they worship a guy named Jimmy Crystal. Immediately, we pick up on the fact that Spike is in a position that really no young boy should be in, nor anyone for that matter. He is put through some awful and traumatizing shit. You really feel for him, dude, especially if you're a parent like me. See, one of the main reasons that I was able to enjoy the last one with all of its flaws was because of the father and son aspect. And how this, it was a coming of age story. I really enjoyed that. In this one, you see young Spike get put through the ringer as well, but while he's with this gang, he witnesses how evil the mainland can really be. We get to spend some time with him as the film goes on. We're watching him navigate this new deadly gang in this new world while taking interest in one of the female members of one of the characters who, she happens to have like some form of pity on him. But meanwhile, while that's going on, we have Dr. Kelson with his fancy science experiment that is brewing with the Alpha. If you don't remember, his name's Samson. He's the zombie from the last one. Big son of a bitch. Now, one of the strengths of this film, aside from the Cult of Jimmy's angle, is Ray Fiennes' portrayal of Dr. Kelson. He's returning from the first film. If you saw the last film, we only got him for a short period of time. Maybe I'd argue about 10, 15 minutes. But he's a separate story that wraps up pretty well with Spike. But he really steals the show, too. When we aren't watching Spike being horrified by his gang, skinning people alive, which, dude, we're watching a good old-fashioned friendship to, the end, basically. It's like a friendship to the end story with Kelson and Samson. I found myself smiling every time we got a scene with these two just locked like that. And it really was the treatment that was needed, because anytime we aren't with them, dude, there is dread in the room. Ray Fiennes' character has a way of making you feel almost comfortable. I won't spoil too much for you, but I do feel like the relationship of Kelson and Samson is very much on par with, like, it's that of like Tom Hanks with Wilson from Castaway. Dude, you'll watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Only it's a little bit better, and I loved where they went with it. I really did. The acting is all around great, especially from Fiennes, obviously, as well. That's from Jack O'Connell, who portrays Jimmy Crystal. And Alfie Williams is, once again, great as Spike. I liked him. This movie also moves at a much better pace than the last one did. But not to mention the scenery played quite a role in this film as well. The last one, that was a huge deal. I am happy to report that we do get more gore and violence, which a lot of people, including myself, felt was kind of missing. Lacking, at least, would be a better word, from the last one. I would argue that this entry is probably the most brutal. Yes, when it comes to the gore department, there is a lot about this film that just does it better. That's really the best way to put it. However, it really is just more of the same. That's why I'm so like frowning upside down. I'm trying, man, but it's now time for the negatives. I felt very frustrated after watching this film for the first time, dude. I was happy and mad, but in a much better way. It does things the way it should have been done the first time around, but that's about it, man. Yes, the story is better, but just like the last one, it is a whole lot of nothing, which is crazy to say, even after I can confirm it is slightly better than the last. But once again, I am left feeling fucking frustrated. Feeling like this franchise is just not living up to the glory days of 28 days later and 28 weeks later. I honestly was ready to give up and just say fuck it until the ending came. We'll briefly discuss that one in like a minute. Sure, there's more like gore, but again, not a lot of zombies. Yes, it answers some questions that you may have had from the last film, but it sure as shit asks a ton more questions. Spike's our lead character, yes, but he takes a backseat to the characters of Jimmy Crystal and Dr. Kelson, which, I guess that makes sense for the purposes of the story. Oh, and then this is a spoiler for you. Spike's father, the character that we clearly see getting ready to chase after his boy at the end of 28 years later, is not in this film at all. Kick-Ass is nowhere to be found in this movie. That is one thing that really just made me irritated. Again, this is only the second film of a planned trilogy. But man, it is going so slow, and like there's no real big bang. We are 2 films in, and it just feels so, is that really it? Like I talk to a lot of people about these movies, and even the diehards that they do love these films will openly admit that they are very different films. They do not offer the same style as the first 2 films in the franchise. And at that point, both Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, they had made that clear before, sure, but at that point, I don't know, dude. It's so promising, but there's no payoff. You had the potential to capitalize on like a Mad Max themed world meets zombies. There was so much that could be done with this movie, especially the last one. Yet it feels and appears to be so small scale for what's supposed to be a big concept. This movie is so bland that the positives are like light love taps. Maybe I am just picky and I'm not cool enough to get it. And believe me, like the last film, it does have that preachiness to it. I'm just being honest with you. You know, the humans are bad, monsters are innocent, and we as humans suck. We fuck everything up. But I do not get why these movies are like this. Once again, I walked away from something that was beautifully shot and well told that didn't really do anything. You're seeing this with a lot of films, though. I would argue that these days we have all this money to throw at these films, right? But we can't seem to get a good film that is more than just looks. And I'm trying so hard to not be ungrateful. But this film is literally the same thing as the last, with a few minor tweaks to make it stand out and look prettier. I know the point of the film is to have a more meaningful impact. Danny Boyle and Garland, again, were very clear about that. They were supposed to be different. But I feel like these people just dodged the fans so that they could tell a preachy story over a classic old-fashioned zombie apocalypse story, man. I mean it when I say that these two films come off as very pompous. I mean, how the hell are you going to make a trilogy of films that are based on a zombie apocalypse, zombie franchise, right? And make them anything other than about zombies? I'm not saying we can't have stories, but dude, why would you market this as a zombie film if it is just about shitty human beings and how they're just awful? That doesn't make any sense. You kind of need the evidence. In other words, there needs to be some fucking zombies for this movie to really feel like it matters. This movie also does like some super questionable shit with the music. There's a scene, dude, that I get what they were trying to do, and it works for this movie, unfortunately, but it completely fucks up the tone. They did that with the last one too, man. They did some questionable shit. In fact, the score for the last movie was insanely bizarre. And one last negative, dude. This is my biggest issue with this film. Spike. Like I said earlier, he's a main character, but he's not really. The focus isn't on him, and that's fine, even though we are led along by him. Yes, Williams is great, but once again, he doesn't grow as a character, at all. I'm sorry, but I just could not believe that Spike was off limits when it came to taking punishment for not doing what he's told or for fucking up. The leader is evil, dude. There are plenty of times where we see Spike clearly, he just can't do these terrible things that he's instructed to do, but he is somehow spared the consequences. Yeah, he's berated, but I don't know, as a parent, thank God, right? No one wants to see a child harmed on screen. But I am not buying that he just gets scolded and treated like anything other than the people in the group. The fully patched members, by the way, they are dealt with in a more severe manner, and that's not what happens to Spike. That was just unbelievable. There's just no way that he would have lasted as long as he did, dude. I just couldn't believe that shit. And what is crazy is the fact that even he can see how bad all this is, but there are plenty of times that he has the ability to exit this group. Due to fear, though, of being caught, he just kind of sticks with them. They did not do a good enough job to have me more convinced that he believes staying will not cause him any harm, dude, especially when nothing happens to him. He is just walking around, watching fucked up shit happen, and he's just puking all over the place. You want him out of there, right? But holy shit, it made little to no sense. And like I mentioned earlier, no Aaron Taylor Johnson, dude, in this one. He'll probably show up in the third one, but no idea where Dad is in all of this, which again made no sense. I was ready to just give up once I saw that there were only a few minutes left, dude. Yeah, you lost me officially. I'm checking out. It was nice, a much more pleasant ride than the last one, but same. Then something amazing happened. I threw my fist in the air yes, we are finally doing something right. And I got what I wanted. I got what I've been waiting for this entire fucking time, 2 movies in. It ended in a way that was so satisfying, even though I was pissed about the fact that I was once again forcing down this boiled chicken meal. But I'm being told it's fire, dude. That it's cooked. And it's no, dude, this should have been in the last film. A certain something that is the literal poster child for this franchise is what you immediately think of when someone mentions 28 days or weeks later, right? Finally, that certain poster child shows up. Yeah, that was nowhere to be found, though, in 28 years later, which, yeah, is another reason that I believe this film feels like out of place. It is just missing a key element, dude. It's missing a key aspect. They managed to sneak that here, though, at the very end. And it made me pleased. I found a glimmer of hope in the upcoming third film. It does pain me to say, though, that the ending is my favorite part of the whole movie, like overall. And even that is not enough to really pull me back to the idea of going to see this shit in theaters. Yes, I'm happy, and I'm glad that the planned sequel is actually going to happen. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Now I also know to just wait for the rental. Honestly, that's what's going to happen. And I'll say it once more. Yes, this one is much better than the last. Has a somewhat better story, and it makes more sense for sure. But like the last one, it is just all talk and no action. It is not a bad film. Okay, keep that in mind. Just because I am frustrated with it does not mean that this is necessarily like a bad movie. It doesn't mean this movie sucks. I have said that just like with the last one, I respect it and it's well done. It's beautifully shot, but it is not good for me. As a diehard fan of the first two films, I do not know what these other two are. They feel foreign. They don't even have any resemblance to the OG. It truly is its own thing. And that's fine. That's what I think that was the point. But you have to at least try to interest the older fans that have stuck it out this whole fucking time since 2002. I am not saying this is a terribly made movie at all. I still found a lot about it to love. But if you're someone that went into 28 years later expecting 28 days or weeks later, and you walked out feeling, isolated, this one has that same effect, sadly. On a positive note, though, one thing I can say is that it does have a lot to offer if you are one of those, like, if you're one of these new wave zombie fans, there we go, especially like Gen Z, dude, you guys will absolutely fall in love with this movie. The messaging, everything. So, 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Where does it fall on my rating system? Though slightly better, it still falls where the last one did, which is worth checking out on streaming. Yeah, do not pay to watch this one. Don't pay to watch it. I know a lot of people are happy with this one. I know a lot of people like the last one too. Even though it technically underperformed at the box office, people are happy. Did you see this film in theaters though? Or did you wait for streaming like me? I am so glad that I did, dude, because I think Days and Weeks are exponentially, they're still better films than these two art house films. That's what these are. Anyway, people, you heard it here. 28 years later, The Bone Temple. I know I'm late, but it is not as bad as the first one, but still not great either. What did you think? Comment below. Let me know. And always, folks, remember to stay rad.